Fail Up. Why did you name it Fail Up? It's such an unusual name.
I think when we think of failure, we tend to think of falling behind, we think of negativity, we think of losing ground. And what I'm trying to argue in the book is that anyone who is successful in any field of human endeavor will admit to you, if they're being honest, that they've learned more from their failures than from their successes. And so in that regard, I don't know anyone who is at the top of any, again, field of human endeavor that didn't fail their way up. So failure doesn't hold you down unless you let it. Failure is not fatal, it's not final. If you're ever going to make it, and whatever that means, you cannot fail your way up. I think so. The most revealing, the most transparent, the most authentic. I mean, if you're going to write any book, you got to be honest. What's the point in writing it if you aren't going to tell the truth? But the very nature of what this book is, which is basically on the occasion of my 20th anniversary in the business, laying out the 20 worst mistakes, the 20 biggest failings I've ever had. So to do that, it requires a certain level of sincerity and openness and transparency that I haven't had to expose before.
It's almost like a public flogging of yourself.
I hadn't quite thought of it as a public flogging. That's one way to look at it. There are 3 or 4 stories in the book that my mother and father and my parents didn't even know about, a few of these stories, because I was so embarrassed by them, so humiliated by them. I knew better, should have behaved better. So some of these things were so difficult for me that I didn't even tell my parents. So I'm not sure it's a public flogging, but it certainly was very revealing in a lot of ways. Well, I think it's hard to pass the buck. It's hard to blame someone else, hard to demonize or cast aspersion on somebody else when you are the one who's made these failures. And the sooner you come to terms with the fact that you can't succeed without failing, the sooner you accept the fact, again, that failure need not be fatal or final, the sooner you accept the fact that you can't get away from it, and that failure really is, in another word, preparation. Failure is preparation to succeed. Sometimes a dead end in your life is really a finish line. Sometimes rejection is really redirection. The sooner you come to terms with that and start to, how might I put this, you start to see, as I say in the book, failure as a friend, then it makes it easier to own your own mistakes, not to demonize, not to cast aspersion, not to blame others, but to accept your own. I have 9 brothers and sisters. And if I had a dime for every time I've given a lecture to one of my siblings, I'm the eldest, so I've got 9 baby brothers and sisters. If I had a dime for every time I've lectured one of them, when they call me for help or for advice or need money or whatever, I've told them repeatedly, you got to own your own mistakes. Life is about choices, the choices that you make. And it's strange when you keep making these bad choices, and then you want to blame everybody else, and then come to Tavis to bail you out as if I'm a lottery ticket or something, because you keep making bad choices. You got to own your mistakes, own your failures, and learn how to fail up from these setbacks.
Sort of like what Michael Vick's did.
Absolutely. Michael Vick's a great example of that. There are a lot of folk who still don't want to give him, a second chance and don't believe in that kind of redemption. I do. And that's what makes life so fascinating and interesting for me, is that there is always another day. Every day you wake up, you get another chance to get it right. And I believe this with all my heart, with every fiber of my being, that there's nothing in life that we do, nothing in life that we endure, that we cannot recover from. Nothing in life that we do that we can't find a way to recover from. Jim Brown, the great football player, I think the greatest football player in the history of the game, to my mind, was a friend of a friend, and I ended up staying with Jim for a number of months when I first moved to LA, for months, till I found my own place. Long story short, when you're staying with a guy like Jim Brown, who is an all-star, all-American, all-world athlete, and he's an actor, and he has access to everybody and everything, and you're just a kid caught up in the bright lights of Los Angeles, you find yourself begging to do this and asking for this and asking for tickets to this, and can I go here and can I do this, and can you give me the hookup on this and the hookup on that, can I meet this person and go here and do. Jim got so tired of me. He understood my energy and my anxiety and my anxiousness about wanting to enjoy life in LA as a new young resident of the city. But he got tired of the begging that I was engaging in. And one day, in front of some other people, I asked him for something, and he literally lost it and just cussed me out, embarrassed me, called me everything but a child of God in that conversation. And I didn't like it. I didn't appreciate it. I thought he was rude the way he did it. But the lesson he was trying to get me to understand was, you do not want to go through life begging folk for favors all the time. The worst way, the quickest way to shorten your success or your path to success is to get to a point where every time somebody sees you coming, they start running the other way because they know you're about to ask and beg and try to get the hook up on something. And so I learned that lesson from Jim. I didn't like the way he taught it to me, but I learned the lesson from him. And so now, I mean, years later, I'm hard pressed to ever ask people for favors. I believe in giving, but I don't do a lot of begging and asking because I don't want to return a bunch of favors. And here's what I found, and it's kind of funny. I think I said this in the book. What I found is when you get to a certain point in life, a certain level of success, the favors that people ask you for are never equal to the favors that you ask them for. So I may ask you to borrow, $50, but you want 2 tickets on the 50-yard line at the football game. The favors are never fair. They're never even.
They're never going to be equal.
So I just try to stay out of that game. But I learned that lesson. Stand on your own. Accomplish on your own. Of course, you don't succeed without somebody helping you. But don't get to that point of begging, hustling, and always looking for the hookup.
Right.
I was hosting my show on BET at the time. I was in D.C. I was in D.C., where BET was headquartered. Robert Townsend was in L.A. on a satellite feed. Long story short, he was on to promote a new movie at the time called BAPS that Halle Berry, you may recall, was in. We're about 5 minutes live to going on the air, and one of my camera guys says to me, Tavis, did you see the movie? I said, yeah, I saw it. In preparation for the conversation with Robert. He said, what do you think of it? And I said, it's horrible. It's a piece of trash. The worst thing I've ever seen. I started trashing this movie because I thought it was, I hated it. It was horrible. I love Robert's work, not his finest moment, BAPS. And I couldn't understand why Halle Berry would agree to be in the movie. So I'm sitting there just trashing this film, not knowing that my engineer mistakenly has opened up my microphone. Robert is sitting in his chair, the studio chair in LA, waiting to go live with me, hears everything I say about this movie. When it comes time to do a mic check 3 minutes before airtime so that Robert can hear me and I can hear Robert, when I finally say, Robert, good evening, he started cussing at me. You mother hucker, I can't effing believe F you, I shouldn't have came on this effing program. I'm not going to subject myself to this S. He starts going off on me. We're 3 minutes from a live show. Long story short, and the whole story's in the book, but I eventually say to Robert, dude, I'm sorry you heard what I had to say. I apologize for my people making a huge mistake in having my microphone open before it should have been open. You don't deserve to be subjected to that kind of commentary as a guest on this program. Number 3, I saw the movie, and I don't like it. I don't think it's your best work. Movie making is subjective. Art is subjective. What you heard was my honest opinion. I'm sorry you heard it, but I don't like the movie. Now, finally, I'm a professional, you're a professional. In 2 minutes, we're going live on the air. As long as you behave yourself as a professional, I will. What happened off the air ain't got no business on the air. Now, are we clear? He started cussing at me again. We got a minute and a half to go, and I cut his mic off. I said, Robert, I can't hear you because I've cut your mic off. But I know you can hear me, and here's the bottom line. Be a professional, brother, and I'll be a professional. But be clear about this. If we get on the air and you start trying to clown or front me, I will front you and clown you back, and I control the microphone. So let's get through this. We go on the air a couple minutes later, and I say, tonight our guest, Robert Townsend, director of the movie BAPS, yada, yada, yada. Robert, welcome to the show. How you doing tonight, Robert? Fine. Thanks for coming on. He gave me nothing, and I'm dying on the air live because he's giving me one-word answers or just grunts and sounds. I finally figured out rather quickly that I should go to a commercial break, which I did. And after the commercial break, I started taking phone calls. It was a live show. We took live phone calls. And so I started taking phone calls from Robert's fans all across the country. And for the rest of that hour, that's how I survived, with his fans calling to ask him questions, to make comments. The shortest interview in 1 hour I've ever done. I asked Robert 3 or 4 questions, and that was it. But I let the callers do the work. But I learned, long story short, that you're always on. And this was many years ago. But in the world we live today, what is done privately becomes public so quick. And when you think that you're not on because of Twitter and Facebook and email and the internet and all of that, you're never not on. Somebody is always watching you. And the quickest way, again, to short circuit success, to find yourself with failures that may be fatal and may be final, is to get caught in one of those open mic moments where you're being exposed. So I tell people to watch out for that on your way to success.